Well, welcome back today, friends. Robert Ham here with Virginia's Second Amendment News. We are on August 22nd today. Believe it or not, it's gone through pretty quickly. We've got a lot going on in the headlines. We're going to be talking about bills in the government, right now specifically in the Virginia General Assembly. We're going to be talking about our main story, white privilege, interesting thing that just popped up today, as well as some headlines from around the U.S. from the Epoch Times. Should make for a really great show. Hope that you're excited about it. And if you are, let's jump right into it. We're going to start right now. Friends out there, if you like what we're doing, don't forget to hit up those Amazon links below. I got some coffee links and some things for cologne and stuff down there. Just really simple, easy things. The things that they help me do for you is continue to produce great content. So if you like what we're doing, use an Amazon link below. Save you a little money and send some cash our way. All right. Let's just take a look through the Epoch Times. You know, we like to keep these things on about a 5-minute segment before we go into our main story, as well as looking around at what's going on with Virginia. But I like to read these quotes today. Trump leader, Iraqi leader meet to discuss role in Iraq, and the dialogue is aimed at exactly that, pulling out forces from Iraq and the whole area. Trump is really doing quite a lot to bring our troops home. It's a pretty nice thing. And the quotes that we've got going on today, let's see this. Kind of fitting to the judgment, to the context that we're going to talk about today. This quote coming, saying this: the longer it is tolerated, the more out of control it becomes, the harder it is to contain it. And that's Maria Haberfield, professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And she's speaking about the rioting in Portland. Guys, if you don't recall, Mr. Keith Love, the one that kicked a man just recently and was on the run, we did a show about him yesterday. That took place on the 18th. The white man driving a truck that was protecting a trans woman, as well as, is it trans woman or trans man? I don't know, but a transgendered, once male, now female, was protecting her and got his butt kicked up by some BLM protesters, and that wasn't enough. They drug him out and kicked him some more. Pretty interesting quote here that Maria Haberfield has about that crime. Looking on a little bit forward, we've got another one. This was about DJI, guys. If you don't know, DJI has been spying on us just a little bit. And that's kind of sad because, you know, I like DJI, I like the products and everything. The sensitive data collected by the Chinese donated drones can be accessed by the drone manufacturer and thereby the Chinese government. This is a report by U.S. think tank, the Heritage Foundation, and it's highlighting the risks posed by drones donated by the Chinese maker DJI to the U.S. law enforcement. Yes, this actually has been going on for a while. I remember when DJI, this was several years ago, 2 years ago, I believe, maybe longer. My memory might be failing me, but they did give quite a few drones, and they may have given more recently. I don't recall, but by doing so, one of the things that was concerning there was that DJI would have access to what the drone would find or be able to view through its log and how it actually records the manifests of each flight. If you're not familiar, DJI is a drone, like a very advanced type of drone that people can buy and fly around. And some of the even more advanced models they gave to the different armed services and police forces. And it's a GPS mapping fly-by-wire system. The drone is pretty much completely automatic, and all you have to do is drive it. It flies all on its own. The issue that we have with that right there is that mapping and that visual sensing is all uploaded to a DJI server before streamed back to the handheld in order to allow you to pilot it. So anytime you're flying, they could be spying. Looks like that's something that may have happened here. Let's check out another quote real quick. Speaking again, Mr. Trump, our president, says, "We look forward to the day that we don't have to be there, and hopefully Iraq can live out their own lives." And that has quite a bit to do with this nice little picture that we've got right here of the Trump and Iraqi leaders meeting to discuss the U.S. roles. There's quite a few other things. I think we got another one coming on. I got a couple things here. Race theory. I've got race theory down. It seems like there's a lot in this episode or this edition of the Epoch Times about some things going on, and most of that comes from page 4. Or is it 6? Yeah, here we go. Senator Hawley. Check this out. Now, if you don't know, Senator Hawley's been in the news quite a bit lately. He's been at the forefront of talks about racial justice, specifically with the riots and things like that. And he's one of the few that's actually really calling out a lot of the liberals as to this white shaming that's going on in order to, white silence is violence, this whole concept of this reverse racism thing. And I think he's doing a good job of kind of turning it around. If you have to put white or black in front of things and your way of describing people, you're already kind of in a strange area. But let's digress. Just to give you this concept right here, Senator Hawley questions white privilege training at U.S. nuclear lab. This is kind of strange. So a nuclear lab, and the reason that this is important, what's going to happen is there was white training that was done at a lab, I believe it was in New Mexico, or it was the Sandra National Laboratories and paid for at Santa Fe, New Mexico resort. So they actually used taxpayer-funded money in order to send their scientists, their white-only scientists, to training about their white privilege. Reading the article just goes into things that really make your skin crawl about why that's even important. But we're going to get into that story a little bit more. Let's just kind of move a little bit more. I want to show you what's going on page 9. Just a couple of fun things about the world in review real quick. Here we go. Russian opposition leader Navalny in coma with suspected poisoning. That's kind of strange. Russian opposition leader, widely regarded as a prominent critic of the Russian President Vladimir Putin, was admitted to a hospital in Siberia suffering symptoms of what his spokesperson called poisoning after his aircraft made an emergency landing. Interesting little thing right there. Prominent Iraqi activist Rahim Yaqub killed in southern Iraq. Dr. Yaqub, a prominent Iraqi civilian activist, was assassinated by an unknown gunman in central Bursa, a port city in southern Iraq. Interesting. That's kind of lots of stuff going on. Libya humanitarian crisis deepens and talks are needed, says the Red Cross. Libya's humanitarian crisis is worsening, compounded by the halt of oil operations, blockade of ports, and spread of COVID-19 right now. So they've got some things that are going on that are pretty rough right there. Depression in the UK doubles during CCP virus pandemic. And there's a survey here. So almost 1/5 of adults in Britain were likely to have had experienced depression in June, double the amount as before the pandemic onset, according to their Office for National Statistics. Well, yeah, when your government locks you down and you can't go anywhere and you got a problem paying your rent and your bills, there could be an issue. And that's going to do it today for our headlines. I want to go ahead and take us out as we move to our next spot, talking about the laws in Virginia, which are in the special session right now, specifically as they pertain to gun rights, and a really interesting no-knock warrant. Said we were going to talk about and learn about the portion of that bill, and we shall today. So let's get right into it. Back into it right now. I just want to remind you, in case you don't know, and I bring this up because it's that important. The lis.virginia.gov is where you're going to find all the information you need to get this information yourself. So if you're waiting for me to come out with something or somebody to talk about a particular bill, go to lis.virginia.gov and then go into bills and resolutions. When you get there, go by day or most frequently accessed, and you can see exactly what has happened. If you come in on the 21st, which was yesterday, I'm recording this early in the morning on the 22nd, you can find out everything that's been going on. So just a quick shout out there. Couple of reminders. Glenn Davis, nice, concealed handgun permit bill. This bill is House Bill 5020, and it's just about limiting the ability of localities to keep you from carrying your firearm with their newly minted authority to keep you from wearing or carrying firearms on public property. It's what it does. So it just exempts concealed handgun permit holders. And so if you're on a byway or street or an event where the city is hosting an event like a Chesapeake Jubilee or something like that, then you would not be able to carry if the local government chose not to or chose to prohibit you from carrying. Don't forget, you also have something else. The VCDL is going around just like with the Constitutional City movement. The VCDL is going out with the No Local Gun Control movement, and I think we've got 19 counties or cities that have pledged ordinances not to make any new local gun laws. This is very important. Guys, if you don't understand the struggle, gun laws and violating gun laws can get people thrown in jail real quick, real fast. And it's really an administrative crime. We're not talking about going out and shooting up some place or anything like that. What we're talking about is going from city to city. If you live in one area and you live in another area and the laws change rapidly, well, you can have a big problem. And those problems, which are just administrative, can come back and actually have some serious long-term effects. This was what was attempted to be corrected with preemption a long time ago. Another fight that the VCDL fought for us back in the 2000, somewhere around there. I can't remember. You guys put down in the comments below if you recall. That would be great. But anyways, what happened was they fought for preemption and won, and then the local governments were not allowed to make any ordinances more strict than the state, right? So all the places that you can't carry here and you can't carry there, that was done away with. Virginia became an open carry state if it hadn't already been. I don't remember from there. And then the transporting and moving and carrying of firearm laws were all unified to make it easy to understand what the law was so that you wouldn't break it. Well, right now, that's in question. It's in flux. This law, House Bill 5020, proposed by Glenn Davis, good dude, lives right around here in Virginia Beach, if I'm not mistaken, aims to give us some of our protections back as of course, we move the legislative session forward and try to fight that. Whew, big mouthful there. What do you say? Big mouthful there. Another one, we've got another one by Glenn Davis. This is House Bill 5024, Firearm Sales Criminal History Record Information Check. Basically, this just eliminates the Class 1 misdemeanor penalty for the purchase of a firearm if you're doing it for someone else or something like that. Specifically as gift and things along those lines. Firearms used to be something in Virginia that you could purchase and give to someone as a gift, as a bona fide gift, not a straw man purchase. There is a difference. Like if you were buying a handgun for your brother or your wife or something like that, then that would be considered a bona fide purchase and not a straw man purchase. Straw man purchases have always been illegal, or at least they've been illegal for as long as I've known about them. You can't buy a firearm for someone with the intent, knowing or not, even if you don't know the person, if you have the intent to sell it to someone of ill repute or just to bypass the system, that is illegal. And anyways, what has happened is with the new firearm laws and universal background checks that came into during the original, not special 2020 session, well, now you can't do that. You can't buy a firearm and give it to your honey because, well, that would be a misdemeanor because you bought the firearm with the intent to give it to someone else. That's something that shouldn't even be an issue. So here it is. We've got it coming back. So that's what that bill is all about. I hope you enjoy that. Let me come over here and just get rid of these. Moving on along again, we've got Sam Rasool, and he's got House Bill 5091. Law enforcement officers required to release video or audio recording if they ever have to discharge their firearm or use serious force. Hey, I like this one. This one is all within keeping of making sure that your rights are protected and you can see exactly what happened. Now, part of this, I'm going to use a current example of Mr. Floyd. George Floyd, we all saw the video that came out immediately when Mr. Floyd was murdered, right? Now, originally we all thought that it was definitely murder, and murder in the legal sense as opposed to manslaughter or involuntary or voluntary or anything else. I mean, I watched the videos and remember my blood boiling thinking, my gosh, how could someone be that cruel to someone? Well, as it turns out, those flash-in-the-pan videos that came out didn't exactly show the whole story. It would have been nice had the body cam footage of the officers been released immediately, but it took something like 6 weeks before it was released, maybe a little bit less. But before it got released, the narrative already jumped into the world and was out there, right? And then there was a problem. If you look at the new video that's been released, the complete unedited videos, well, you'll find out that there was quite a bit more going on with what was happening to Mr. Floyd. Not that it changes any part of the travesty of what happened, not that police reform shouldn't happen, but it does change the narrative, and the narrative is what has spurred the riots. There were peaceful protests, but not for long. They turned into riots. Those that are gathering to peacefully protest for police reform, I'm with you. Those that are murdering, maiming, killing, shooting, whatever, beating, I'm not with you. We've got problems with that. This kind of law right here that Mr. Rasool has proposed, House Bill 5091, would help avoid a situation like that in Virginia. Do you like it? What do you think? Leave the comments down below. Moving right along, we now have local gun control firearms concealed handgun permits. This is Benton Chaffin. This is Senate Bill 5108. It's the same as Glenn Davis's bill that we talked about. I won't repeat it. I'll just read the summary. Local gun control or local control of firearms concealed handgun permits. And this bill provides that any local ordinances that prohibit possession, carrying, or transportation of any firearms shall not apply to a person with a valid concealed handgun permit. Once again, we've got that battle being fought on both sides of the House and the Senate in our General Assembly. And then moving on over, I want to bring this one up. And this is I'm going to read this bill to you and show you something, and then kind of come into a little bit more of that info before we jump right into the main story. So we're coming around the bend for the main story here in just a moment. But this is House Bill 5099, Search Warrants, Prohibition on No-Knock Search Warrants, as introduced by Lashrecse. Now, this is really cool, and I'm not going to read all of this right here, but basically it puts a moratorium on no-knock warrants, specifically attacking any kind of no-knock warrant, to include the ones that you could get with a red flag and everything else, and goes into account to detail why that's important. Specifically, Mrs. Arid Delegate Arid wants to make sure that all citizens of Virginia don't have to be put under the pressure of this no-knock type of warrant. Now, a no-knock warrant, if you're not aware, is a type of warrant that can be sworn out on a person by a judge in secret that they don't have any recognition of. Generally, these no-knock warrants are served during the early morning hours when people would normally be asleep, and they are served by punching in, breaking down the door, and raiding the house. Okay, it's not like a real quick knock, knock, knock. Hey, I'm the police. We have a warrant. No. This is a very militant type of operation. It's planned. There's a lot of things that go into ahead of it. Even if there were an opportunity for the police to come and execute the warrant in a very safe way, maybe even if you somehow came into contact with the police just by going to say hi and bring them some donuts, on the day they're going to execute the no-knock warrant, they wouldn't, even in that situation where it was nice and completely contrived, but simple and easy to just execute the warrant on you then. Instead, they would wait and do this no-knock warrant. Well, in the middle of the night, I know that in the middle of the night at my house, if there are doors being broken down, there's an AR that's I got alarms everywhere on here, man. And if someone's jumping into the house, breaking and beating the door down, now, I don't know who they are. They're going to be met. They may very easily be met with a different kind of reaction than would be, hey, Mr. Ham, you need to come with us. Completely different kind of story. You guys can get it there. Now, I really liked that this was introduced. I talked about it 2 days ago, and I wanted to find out more about Delegate Arid, however you say it, Lashrecse. And so she's a Democrat in the 63rd District. And Democrat, you don't usually see them proposing this kind of information. So I went over to Lashrecse for Delegate. And I got to say, I like the photography here. So whoever she hired to do her photography, I enjoyed that. And there's some issues. Right now, we're on the news. You can get to know her, but I want to kind of give you some ideas and photos of what she looks like. Just a kind, happy, very well-to-do kind of looking young woman. And when we come over here, we're actually talking about how she takes issues of criminal justice reform and the impact of COVID-19. And we actually find out police reform, part of her no-knock warrant, and part of her platform that she ran for office was on no-knock warrant and police reform, specifically codifying the definition of excessive use of force and a ban on neck restraints. Now, this is reform I can get around, okay? I enjoy it. I've got a lot of support for her, and I might reach out to her in the next couple of days just to have a conversation with her over the phone, because I'd like to find out what other issues she has. She is a Democrat, but she might actually be a Democrat like you or I might think of a Democrat. You know, you got the center line, you got Republican on one side, Democrat on the other, and everybody's can rally around some common issues, even if they have some slightly different thoughts about things. Not the way the left is so far left, there is no commonality with the center. And even far right is so far right, there's no commonality with the center. So she might be a pretty centrist Democrat. We don't know. I'd like to find out, but I do like this part of what she has to say right there. And I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to share it with you. Okay, guys, I'm going to get a real quick drink, and we're going to bring up our next bit, white privilege, race training. We're going to follow up our main story from the headline and talk a little bit about that and what that means. It's really a strange day in 2020. that up there for you. Guys, if you are enjoying what you're hearing, don't forget to check out those Amazon affiliate links below. It's got a couple of things. Anything that you purchase through one of those links will help the channel. So if you just click on that link and then you do your regular shopping, whatever that might be, that'll help out the channel quite a bit. Send a few schmeckles over our way. It won't cost you any more. Currently on those links, I've got some coffee, I've got some cologne, I got a really cool t-shirt and everything else. Especially if you like your Second Amendment, you'll enjoy that t-shirt. All of it's less than 20 bucks. But if you head on over there, like I said, I don't get anything from those links, but I do get a couple. I don't get any. I'm not sponsored by Amazon or anything is what I'm trying to say. My music ended and I lost my train of thought. So there we go. Guys, I want to bring this up because we've got a few tabs to continue over. We're about halfway through the show. This is about a good time to begin our white privilege and our race training and you know, all that other good stuff that's going on right now. Well, what is white privilege? Let's just find out what the definition of it is. And I'm over here on Wikipedia because that was always the place that my college professor said you should go and get your first source. It wasn't then, but lots of people use it now. It's gained quite a bit. White privilege is the social privilege that benefits white people over non-white people in some societies, particularly if they are otherwise under the same social, political, or economic circumstances. And it has roots in European colonialism with the Atlantic slave trade and the growth of the Second British Empire after 1783. Well, when you get right there, I think for what we need to talk about, there's probably several different explanations of white privilege, but the idea is that it is a way of recognizing how you are better than someone else and feeling bad about it. That doesn't even make much sense, does it? It's actually a way of charging you for the crimes of other people, right? So this concept of white privilege has to do with you being you, but being responsible for oppression that someone else may have done to someone else. And if you like that, I got a little snippet here from Mr. Jordan Peterson over here at Prager University. I think that you'll enjoy this. Let's go ahead and pull this up real quick.
You know, I think the idea of white privilege is absolutely reprehensible. And it's not because white people aren't privileged. You know, we have all sorts of privileges, and most people have privileges of all sorts, and you should be grateful for your privileges and work to deserve them, I would say. But the idea that you can target an ethnic group with a collective crime, regardless of the specific innocence or guilt of the constituent elements of that group, there is absolutely nothing that's more racist than that. It's absolutely abhorrent. I can't... Yeah.
Now this video is a really nice one. It goes on for about 6 minutes. You're welcome to go check it out. I've got the links down below. We're going to pop back out of that. But that's the concept that we're talking about right now. The fact that white privilege is really about criminalizing a group of people for the sins of a few people. And actually, that's guilty by association. And under that mantra, we recognize that we're all kind of wrong. That doesn't make any sense. Everyone can be guilty by association. I want to give you a real quick story before I jump into some of this. And this happened to me. This was my sister. You know, I grew up not knowing my sisters. I grew up, my family had split. My father and I went one way, my mom and my sisters went the other way. And I was reunited with them later on in my life when I was older, 16, 17, 18, and I began to build friendships with them. And my older sister, who I have quite a bit of respect for still, but have not spoken to in quite a long time, was, well, she was inspiration to a lot of things for me, and I was an inspiration to her. When I began college, she then saw that and realized she'd like to go to college as well. She went to college, and we would talk often about things. I was a business major, and she was a psychological major, things like that, soc and psych. And as she went through college and she'd gotten to her master's program, I remember her having conversations with me about how she didn't understand or didn't care for the fact that she had to write all these papers about her white privilege. And when she began her master's program, and I'm not even going to talk about where she was going or any kind of identifying stuff like that, but as she began the master's program, we used to have daily conversations about that. She'd call me up angry, and even sometimes we talk to the professor and everything else, and they would give her zeros if she did not agree and affirm that she had white privilege, and then write these papers. And as she specialized later on in I guess master's, you're already kind of specializing, but going into clinical psychology and licensed clinical social work, she really had to become aware of her white privilege and then project it and talk about it and tell people all about it. And then finally, those conversations kind of changed more and more. And they went from very often to very few, and then they turned into the fact that she was preaching to me about how I had to accept my white privilege and stuff. So what I'm saying is, over that period of time where she was in college, she was indoctrinated into a system. If she had not been indoctrinated into it, they would not and were actively seeking to work against her in her grades and everything else. If that's not some kind of reverse something, if that's not some kind of oppression, I don't know what it is. And that's the type of oppression that's being placed on people in higher education. That's what has happened with the left collecting and monetizing higher education and commanding our higher education. Very interesting things right there. And that's a bit of this white privilege, right? Privileged to be discriminated against is very strange. Now, that doesn't mean people often will assume that when you begin asserting a position on a topic like this, you automatically assume that you are making them less and you more. And that has to do with people feeling attacked just because it's a touchy subject, a feelings kind of subject. But the reality is we have freedom of speech in this country. Freedom of speech is absolute. Freedom of consequence is not. So if you make speech in such a way that affects the outcome of someone else as to harm them, then that speech is not generally protected. And you could fall victim to some kind of issue, whether it's civil or criminal, like yelling fire in a crowded building. But the reality is that the concept to express yourself through clothing, through gestures, through whatever, through speech, through poem, through YouTube videos, is your right. And you shouldn't feel like you're not allowed to express yourself. Now, why do you feel like you're not allowed to express yourself? If you do, it's probably because you feel ashamed or you feel like your expression could harm you in some way. Politically, it could harm you socially at work. If you're at work and you're listening to this kind of video, if it was about Black Lives Matter and Black Pride, it'd probably be fine. But if you heard people talking about white privilege and the fact that there shouldn't be any white privilege and that white privilege is actually a hoax in order to get you to ascribe to a narrative by shaming you, then you might be turning this down right now. Well, you shouldn't. And we've got a problem in this country because that's how we've been made to feel. And when I say we, I mean any person that feels like they can't share their mind. We should be able to have an open exchange of ideas. Well, that being said, we're going to move on over to this. A breakdown of white privilege over here at the Odyssey. Breakdown of white privilege in response to why white privilege is as racist as it sounds. If you don't understand that this article by the Odyssey is generally going to be a response to anti-white privilege, saying that white privilege is a thing, is actually racist, then you're there. The article is just going to go out and it's going to break down quite a bit of the history of it. I bring it up for this paragraph right here. The author claims that the term white privilege was coined out of nothing, but contrary to what the author might believe, white privilege did not come from nothing. The origins of the concept of white privilege go back to 1935. During the 1930s, the United States, there was a continued large presence of racism, discrimination, and segregation despite the abolition of slavery in 1865. Now, they're getting ready to go into this, but I bring this article up, and it's down in the comments below so that maybe it will kind of get you hooked. You want to go read a little bit of it because it tells the history of where this word comes from. But basically, white privilege, the concept of white privilege actually arose with the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Specifically, it's a communist idea, a fascist kind of idea that talks about the working class versus the upper class or the business class. And the reason that's important is because those ideas are the same kind of ideas that are being propelled into our faces today by groups like Black Lives Matter, as well as groups like Antifa. We see that happening now. And I'll say this right here, and if it has to be said, it should be silly. If you have to put a color in front of Lives Matter, then you've got a problem already. And also, Black Lives Matter as an organization is not a good organization. The things that they say that they do don't appear to be the things that the things that they say that they value don't appear to be the things that they say that they do. In fact, I would say that working for social equality would be better by uniting people rather than dividing. One of the things they say is they want to be a place to bring about community with all people, but they definitely don't. But how that relates to white privilege is that it's one of the tenets right here, the concept of white privilege, that goes back to original founding of Marxism, communism, fascism. American Thinker is also another brief history of white privilege. Nice little article right here. I want to bring your mind to it. You got to look at this from the point of view of an Irish Catholic or working class person raised in a decaying city in upstate New York, says this author. An area in which my childhood was well on the way to becoming the northern extension of the Appalachia, as long as they had lived there. And each of those factors determined this by the simple skin color of the European origin, and each acted as an excuse for discrimination and exploitation. Each remains in play to some extent today. The concept of white privilege, as it has to do with the brief history from the American Thinker, discusses the fact that it wasn't ever about white privilege. In the Appalachians and the Allegheny Mountains, you had the hill people, the hill folk, the mountain folk. They were white, right? But they were looked down less upon by traditional white people of the cities and things like that. Much like the Irish, much like the Europeans that came over, specifically the Irish, after the potato famine and coming to New York, they were street rats as far as the people thought of them, as far as even this article discusses. And that's an important thing to remember. When you talk about white privilege, you're just assuming, and this is why it's racist, you're just assuming that every person of that's white in the name has some kind of privilege. Well, we all have some kind of privilege of some sort, but the reality is it's not about our skin tone or skin color or anything else. It could be about our economics, or it could be about our social status of our family. It could be about the way that we apply ourselves. It could be about a lot of things. Could your skin color play a part of it? I'm sure that it could, just like there are racist people out there, just like there are bad cops out there, just like there are people that curse out there, just like there are people that smoke. It's a presentation of oneself. There are people out there that do fit this narrative. But the reality is, the generality is much more grand. It's not as specific. Most cops are good. Most people are good. Most people aren't racist. Most people don't smoke. I think only 15% of the U.S. population smokes. Just a few years ago, it was something like 50%. Wow, think about that. So times change, people change, things change. And to make that broad generalization is nothing more than a stereotype. And we all like to talk about stereotypes, don't we? Well, if you thought that the nuclear facility in New Mexico was interesting about having a white training, right, for all their white people, the Tennessee Star is reporting also that Hamilton County teachers now sit through white privilege training. This white privilege training, you might start asking yourself, like, where did it come from? Like, why is it so prevalent right now? Let's go ahead and pull this up. And I guess the reality of why it's so prevalent will be made aware in just a moment. But we've been talking about this, and what is white training, or this white privilege training? So here we go. We've got some screenshots. In Hamilton County, teachers are reportedly having to go through white privilege training, just as teachers in Williamson County had to do earlier this year. So the Tennessee Star is actually stating that this is something that's happened earlier in their state's history, just earlier this year. On its own Twitter page, Hunter Hogland of the Chattanooga-based WRCB television station showed slides teachers took in an in-service meeting. When we look at these slides, let's see if I can pull one up right there. Here we go. Close that. We can actually see these slides right here. White privilege. White privilege is both a legacy and a cause of racism. This is what the teachers are being taught and told. Appears that there's a black man giving a lecture to a bunch of white people. Let's see another one. Racism. People of color cannot be racist because they lack the institutional power to adversely affect white lives. All right, so there's a lot that's talked about when it comes to institutional racism and everything else. Institutional racism is a concept that there is racism by power that was established through wealth gained through usurping the freedoms and the lives of a people, specifically black people or people of African descent, but also any other BIPOC, black or a person of color. But not Asians. They're not included in that recently, some reason. This is ridiculous. This is just a way, once again, this is white privilege, right? White privilege is them mansplaining, blacksplaining, whitesplaining, whatever you want to call it, as an example. There's a black man up there telling you that you're racist because you're white. You don't even know it because you've got power of an institution through your skin color, historical power from that institution through your skin color, and that no black person can possibly be racist because they lack the institutional power. It's ridiculous to even hear that. It makes no sense. What the argument is really about is whether or not a group of people are racist, and if that group of people acts in a way that belittles or downtroddens or depresses one person or another, one group or another. But that's not what's happening here. That's called the good old boy system. Hey, look, man, I was in the National Guard for a little while, and I recognized the good old boy system, and I was white, and they were white, and I just wasn't part of the clique, and that was that after I got out of the Army. Hey, that's cool. I just went to another unit. There are always going to be cliques wherever you go. The mail service is not institutionally racist. The Army is not institutionally racist. The United States government is not institutionally racist. In fact, in America, we are the most free people on the world, right? Think about women empowerment. Think about women in politics, in positions of power in the government. Affirmative action has worked, whether or not you like affirmative action or not, has worked to empower people and place people into positions of power in corporations all throughout the United States. In fact, because of affirmative action, if you are a white person, specifically, if you are a white person and you are going for a job A, and there are other people, but they aren't as less qualified as you, they can be and will be promoted into that position, even if you're more qualified, if they meet one of those affirmative action categories. Meaning if they're women or a person of color or a woman person of color or things like that, those are all like points in promotion that get them the job before they do you. Realistically, shouldn't it be about the best person for the job? I don't know. Let's think about this. You have to hire a photographer for your wedding. Do you want the best photographer that you can get? Do you want the best photographer you can get at the best price? Or do you want the photographer that you have to get because the government says there's not enough black photographers or women photographers or lesbian photographers? Which one do you want? Now, if the black woman or lesbian photographer was the best photographer, excellent. They have every right to be the best photographer out there. No problem with it. But should you be forced to hire that person just because of their skin color, race, or sexual orientation? Don't we have an entire act about not discriminating on the basis of sex, color, and orientation? Wow. Strange, if you ask me. Continuing on back over here, let me just pull that back up. This is all about places. Right now, we're still talking about what is this white racism? What is this white privilege? So far, there's not quite a lot of privilege to go on. We gotta continue. You want to talk about Google? Let's talk about other places that give white privilege diversity training. Now, this Weasel Zappers. Okay, so this is funny. I found the story in a couple places, but I chose to showcase this because I just thought the Weasel Zappers was funny. But just Google it. Just Google white privilege at Google, white privilege training at, and it'll pop up. Check it out. Hey, a software engineer at Google has made another devastating reveal of the Google's liberal bias. Check it out. Mike Wacker leaked 2 pages of far-left dogma on race, privilege, and sexuality published in Google's Allyship 101 diversity training materials. We don't need to say any more. We can go over there and check out some of those tweets. I want to kind of move past this. We're getting to the 38-minute mark, and usually I like to be done around 46 minutes, so I've got a couple more things to show us here. But the concept is that this agenda is being pushed, and I guess where does this agenda come from? Well, there's a couple of them. I had another one, but we're going to just jump right onto it. Page not found. National Museum of African American History and Culture, part of the Smithsonian. Page not found. Well, what page are you looking for? Where was this? Why is this page not found important? Well, it's because they've got a whole section here that's based on talking about race, specifically race, you being white. Now, I've read this back and forth. There's so many things that are just ridiculous. If you read this page, you will find out that being white is a problem, and you, a white person, must fix the problem. White silence is violence, right? No one else is racist. You're the issue the entire time. That's what it talks about. Now, the nice part is it makes it very simple, just like a class, right? It's easy to understand why you're the problem. Who am I? I'm an educator. Okay? Black man talking to children. Who am I? I'm a parent or a caregiver. They're telling you how you can learn to not be so privileged and how you can talk about race with all these people. Who am I? I'm a person committed to equality, equity. This continues, but what thing do they have right over here? Here's the whiteness in white culture. Now, they took this off. That's where the page not found comes from, right? I actually had to go to the Google Wayback Machine, the archives, and find this. If you didn't realize what racism is, this is it. Now, I will say this. I'm getting ready to point out the fact that the flag is backwards. If you can't see that right there, the flag under white culture in the United States, there's a flag. Whenever the flag is hung in that position, as seen from the front, the stars and stripes the stars should be on the left. Okay, that's very important. Now, I know that. That is an example of white privilege. The fact that I know that, and the fact that I would even tell you about that, is an example of white privilege. How is that? We're going to find out. Well, white people are ruggedly individualistic, and the emphasis is on the individual as the primary unit with self-reliance. Independence and autonomy are highly valued and rewarded, and individuals assume to be in control of their own environment, and you get what you deserve. So if you think that hard work pays dividends, if you believe early to bed, early to rise, that's how you get it done, if you believe that you can make things happen, that's a part of your rugged individualism, being white. That's a problem. Remember, this is put out by the National African American Museum as part of the Smithsonian. The nuclear family, the father, the mother, 2.3 children, is the ideal social unit. This is what it means to be white. The husband is the breadwinner and the head of the household. The wife is the homemaker and subordinate to the husband. Children should have their own rooms and be independent. So, if your parents worked hard and your dad happens to be the breadwinner and your mom happens to stay home and you happen to have a couple kids and a white picket fence and your kids have individual rooms, then the American dream, well, that's white culture. That's what it means to be white, and there's a problem. Right? That's what they're telling us. An emphasis on the scientific method, the objective, rational, linear thinker, cause and effect relationships, quantitative emphasis. The scientific method can't possibly be anything near white culture. It can't be. It's so much that I'm having some cognitive dissonance just thinking about it right now. The fact that you could recognize the cause has an effect, and then make a decision about it. That's just a way of thinking rationally, which is what the scientific method is. Let's not forget something very, very important. It is the Socratic method. It is the concepts of Newton and Einstein and Galileo and Tycho Brahe. These are people. Yes, these are all people of Eastern descent. They're Caucasians, but that's where the building happened, right? That's not a statement that one culture is better than another culture or anything else like that. It's a statement of fact. Rome happened. Greece happened. The city-states happened. The concept of democracy is a Western concept. Guess what? Through capitalism, that Western concept has taken over the earth. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong about other ones, but that's where we are today. We wouldn't have this computer without the scientific method. We might still have sticks. We can continue going on with this history based on the Northern European immigrants' experience in the United States and heavily focus on the British Empire and the primary Western or Greek, Roman, and Judeo-Christian tradition. The work ethic is also a part of whiteness. Work hard. Well, hard work is the key to success, and work before you play. And if you don't meet your goals, you didn't work hard enough. Yes, absolutely. I shouldn't accept to get a handout if I don't deserve a handout. Right? I should work hard. You should work hard. We should all work hard for a better future for all of us, not just one of us. When you look at this, planning for the future, delayed gratification, progress is always best and tomorrow will be better. These kinds of things, these are traditional Christian, Judeo-Christian kind of values. They're typical kind of biblical style of values. But not only there, but what we are a nation that was founded on the Bible. We were a nation that was founded, this nation under God. We are a nation that was founded, possibly even the promised land is promised to Abraham and Sarah from the Lord God. We get our Constitution. We recognize our rights are unalienable, given to us by the Creator. We also recognize that there are some wrongs. We are the only nation on earth that has fought itself to correct the wrongs that it created and has continued to fight the world to correct wrongs as seen other places like genocide and stuff. We forget that this is a great country where millions of people have come not to be white and not to be black, but to be American and be American in their own way. But one thing that requires is assimilation. It requires wanting to be American. That's something that we got to remember. Guys, it has been a long conversation today. I wanted to bring these things up for you. I hope that you have enjoyed it just as much as I have. We are hitting that 45-minute mark. Like I said, I try to have these things done in about 45 minutes. So maybe this is a conversation for another day. If you like what you've seen, don't forget to follow us over on anchor.fm/Va2A News. Going there, you can listen to this on your way to work. You can also support the channel quite simply by hitting one of the links, the Amazon links down below. Those links don't charge you anything extra, but the affiliate link gives me a couple of dollars depending on the link, or a couple of pennies depending on the link. I've got some coffee down there. I've got some cologne down there. I've also got a t-shirt down there. I'm not sponsored by any of those brands. They just happen to be links I thought that someone might find useful. Another nice thing is if you do any shopping on Amazon, clicking on one of those links and then buying something else helps support the channel, right? So if you're going to get your dish towels, or you're going to buy a computer and you're going to get one on Amazon, please use the links below. It'll help me create great content for you. And with that, it is a wrap. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm Rob, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. And don't forget, Va2A News, we are reporting on your rights.